Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to a podcast. I'm doing a podcast now. Well, I'm not doing a podcast. I've got Adam Nather with me as well. He's the only Adam Nather on Facebook. That's his claim to fame. There are no other Adam Nathers, so he can truly go around saying he's one of them. Hello, Adam.
Hi, how are you doing, Tim?
I'm very well, thank you. Adam's been trying for many, many weeks and months, and seeming, I don't know, maybe even years at this point, to pin me down to actually do some kind of Club 100 podcast with him. So here we are, we're doing one, and we'll see how this goes. So, what's the point, Adam? Why are we doing this?
I mean, my idea was just kind of nicking off Andrew Mather when he used to do the BUKC podcast, but essentially, like, when people are going down to rounds, we usually have hours of driving, so I just thought, to get people in the mood for a weekend, or anybody just wanting to get a bit more in the karting mood after a round, it's just great to have a little chat about it.
So this is born purely out of all you Northerners having to travel hours in a car in order to get anywhere.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if Round Rev ends up on the southern calendar somehow, then you'll have the exact same pain to share. GYG must have been a pretty long drive for you.
It's one of the longer ones. It's about 3 hours. The longest one is normally Ella, but we're not going to Ella this year. But Ella is about sort of four and a bit, just because of the direction from me, and then Lid was about 4.
What about Clay? I reckon Clay must have been quite long.
Clay's about 2 hours from me.
Never mind.
Yeah.
About 5 hours from me.
Yeah, you poor northern boys having this like, oh yes, I'm off for karting for the weekend. I've got to leave on Thursday.
Pretty much. It's not great, but yeah. I just thought it'd be nice for people to listen to on the drive down and back, and I'm always up for chatting, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what you're saying is that this podcast needs to be 5 hours long, should it be?
Yeah, we'll be able to get out like 10 episodes within one chat, because we'll just be here forever.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I'll have closed down and gone away, and you'll still be talking to Karen.
Yeah, I'll still just be talking.
Cool. So there's the point. So you can have this blessing your ears, or possibly even your eyes, if you're not the person driving, on the way to a meeting. Now, if you aren't somebody that does Club 100 racing, and you've managed to stumble upon this podcast, I don't know how this would
be shocking.
But you never know, maybe it will. If you don't know what Club 100 is, Club 100 is a arrive and drive rental karting series where you turn up, you jump in a car. They're pretty even most of the time. Occasionally you get ones that are absolute rocket ships. Occasionally you get ones that mean it's a bit more challenging to work your way to the front. But on the whole, they're pretty even. And you go out and have some good times racing. A lot of the time, the competition is pretty high because you're racing against people that have been around motorsport for a while. I mean, someone like myself, I did like a lot of owner-driver racing back when I was a wee young whippersnapper like Adam. But yeah, I used to do owner-driver racing and then stopped because time and money and life got in the way. And eventually got back into it, and so there's a lot of people like that have had a decent amount of karting experience or driving experience, and there's people that have not done much at all, so there's always going to be someone to race against, which is cool. So if you're someone that is looking for a racing series where you don't have to spend millions of pounds in order to take part, I mean, I don't know what it costs to do a year now of British
You
champs.
did do a video on
Europeans.
that, though, did Oh, you British. I thought you meant Club 100. I was like, you definitely did do a video on the cost of Club 100.
Yeah, a little while ago. Maybe excellent plug. Well done. I'll link it just here. But yeah, no. I think when I did that video, there was like the very basic prices that I could see. We were looking about 15 grand a year to do owner driver, and that wasn't looking at doing British champs and Europeans and stuff like that. So. I mean, when I was owner driver racing, I think it was even just to put your piece of paper in to go and do a European round was several £100. So
really,
yeah.
I don't have that background, so it's just crazy every time people talk about the amount of money that goes into owner karting.
Yes.
And then it just makes our little kind of corner of the karting sphere just seem so much more affordable.
Yeah, I suppose like there's various comments on that video in particular about how well, when you've bought the car, you then have an asset that you can always sell on afterwards. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But you also have like 30 other people that are potential hazards causing you to have to go and buy a load of spares. And if you write your car off, no one's going to buy it from you.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is getting way off track for what we were going to talk about, but
won't be the first time.
when Super One was the British Championships, this is dating myself now, but yeah, I in my second year of racing, I went and did Super One because I think I was intent on having a baptism by fire, and wasn't competitive in the slightest versus the absolute quickest boys, but I sort of managed to sort of hold my own a little bit, and there were several rounds where you'd leave the circuit and there would just be chassis in the bin.
Really?
Yeah, just stripped down chassis just in the bin, and you'd look at them being like, that doesn't look that bad. Like, you could probably, like, some thrifty dad and lad could probably pluck that out of the bin and make something of it. But yeah, just it's a different world where you go like, oh yeah, that's not good enough. Should we sell it? Nah, just whack it in the bin.
And like, I think that was something for me coming into the championship or coming into Racing Club 100 and not having done owner driving. That was a bit of a shock. I always took to speak to newer drivers who are a bit sometimes daunted, sometimes just really surprised by the level of drivers within Club 100. And it's great because it means that there's always somebody that's really competitive, always somebody to look towards, and always somebody to race against. And you always feel like, okay, there's always a really competitive grid, which I know that's obviously if you're doing British Champs, not an issue, but if you're doing kind of IKR, just usual circuit series for owner driving, like sometimes they'll struggle to get grids, sometimes the people there are all quite novices, whereas at Club 100 there's always somebody quick to race against, as we know.
Yeah, I mean, it's so I say, like, you've got on the Saturday, like when I'm doing SP40 and SP60, you've got grids of 30 plus. It's like, ideally, I'm only going to be racing against like your top 5 at the front, because that's where I want to be, is always in that sort of top 5. But you've got 30 people on the circuit to race against. So I was watching the British champs from Warden Law over the weekend, and you got some grids where this is the national championships for that series, and there's numbers in the teens. It just makes you think, like, how, if that's the national championship for that series, and they've got only sort of 14, 15, 16 or so drivers doing it, like, club rounds must be like in the single digits.
I mean, the X30 yesterday, I don't think they had a final cut-off. They usually have a final cut-off if they have enough entries of 34 drivers, but they didn't have enough drivers for a final cut-off, so everybody was just automatically in the final. And last weekend, what I noticed was, obviously it was Rotax, British Champs, but there was also the Club 100 Cadets live stream going on, and that actually had more people watching than British Champs.
Really?
Yeah, it had like 100 more viewers. I was shocked. I mean,
fair play. Yeah, I suppose that's a testament to the product, isn't it? But
yeah, definitely. But I was shocked. I thought British Champs would have had like many more viewers, but no.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be really interesting to take some of your like top level national drivers now, and whack them against some of like the absolute top guys in Club 100, like your Joes and Kurtz and Anwars and guys, and just sort of like see, because they're not the same to drive. I remember like it was about a 10-year gap between me doing owner driver and starting karting again with Club 100 stuff, and you sort of you have that muscle memory, even though it was 10 years ago. But they're very different machines to drive to a non-rental car. Obviously, that like a non-rental is much lighter to start off with.
Has a grippier, I imagine, as well. I've not driven one, so this is in the realm of the unknown for me. But even just looking at onboards, you can tell how different it is.
And the lightness and the amount of grip you have is very different. But just like, you have to make the Club 100 card work. Like is whereas like in I remember going from a Gillard chassis to a Formula K chassis, and this was when the Gillard chassis that was made, it was not a particularly good one, and then jumped into the Formula K at the time, and it was just transformative. and it's the sort of thing where like you thought about moving the steering wheel and you went around a hairpin, because you could almost completely control the thing just using your pedals and just the smallest amount. Whereas on your Club 100 stuff, like if you don't move the steering wheel, you're spearing off into the barriers because you have to make it work. But yeah, it's interesting. It would be quite cool to see. Maybe that could be on JV's list of things.
Yeah, JV's bucket list.
Do after the finals of the nationals, you get all the winners, all the podium places in a Club 100 kart, and they go around for ultimate supremacy.
Ultimate Club 100 Super Final Championship. That'd be great. You do get a bit of because you get people from Owner Karting do BUKC. We had a couple of years back. They had Lucas Ellingham, who WMKC champ. I don't know much about his background, but I know he was some sort of champion in British karting. I think it was just Wilton Mill Kart Club. I don't know if he did any British champs or how far he got in British champs, and he was roughly on the pace. But if you asked me to back against he was a lightweight, so maybe a Fraser Brunton, I would back Fraser or Joe over somebody like Lucas. And we have had some really accomplished owner drivers do BUKC, and so the ones at the top, similar, if they're doing well in British champs, they usually do well in BUKC and they'll usually get to the top. But there are some that you expect coming in that would be really, really good, and they're still good, but definitely beatable. So yeah, I guess it's just dependent on how quick people are kind of able to adapt to those karts, especially because there's no practice in that. You just kind of into your race, and you just have to be ready to race what you've got.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things, isn't it? It's you have to be incredibly adaptable in the Club 100 stuff, because if you do pick a kart that's a rocket ship, then it's like, yeah, great, like you have no excuse not to be at least finishing in the top 3, depending on what the race is that you're doing. But then you see the guys that are always at the front, and they're not picking rocket ships every time.
No, but they're just always quick.
They're just you put them in a shopping trolley, and they're somehow still at the front. It's
yeah. I think that's what separates kind of, you alluded to Kurt, Joe, and more the top 3 in the championship to maybe slightly below down the order. Just being able to always be at the front no matter what you're in, and just keeping that consistency. Whereas, for me personally, I know that the most part, I'd struggle to keep that consistency over a full sprints weekend. Usually last year and to the start of this year, it's kind of similar, where 2 heats will go pretty well, and the third heat, whether it's bad cut, where it's just me being a tool, it just doesn't all resemble into one weekend when everything goes right, which is something that they're able to do pretty consistently. And I think that's what separates them from the mere mortals below the grid. Yeah.
Speaking of how terrible you are, how did last year go?
Last year went pretty well for me. It was a bit disingenuous to say it was my first full season, but it was my first full sprint season. I'd done the endurance for a couple of seasons prior, and I'd done a few off sprints on the back end of the year before. So I entered the C2 championship, which luckily I ended up winning, and I finished just behind you in the championship, 7th overall, which has then promoted me to the C1 class for this year, which is a new kettle of fish.
Yeah, so
to say the least.
So it is officially official that I am technically better.
For now.
Unless I die, and then in which case,
I was going to say, unless you're ill.
Yeah, but no. In serious, it was cool. You definitely weren't a C2. Just saying that right now. You are far too fast and consistent to be. Well, no, that's unfair. To suggest that's not suggesting that C2s aren't quick, because you've got a lot of very quick boys in Class 2. But I think you alluded to it. It is that consistency, and you tend to find that the most consistent drivers and consistently quick drivers are the ones in C1. And I'd say that last year you demonstrated definitely that you could be really consistent as well. Hence why you're now a C1.
Yeah, C1.
And you got a championship. Well, and you're technically better than I am, because I only ever got runner up in C2. So I just had the biggest bottle job of the end of the year that I could possibly have.
You also had you had big competition in Kyle Walker. He was something special as well.
Mr. Ella Park just goes.
Yeah, wins the A final. Ella.
Yeah, he just goes and wins it by like 10 seconds as well over everybody. It's just like Jesus.
Yeah, it wasn't even close.
I blame Andrew Mather for that one as well, because I was on that weekend. I was going over to go and weigh myself before the start of the heats, and he was like, sort of singing, "Do you mind having a quick word on camera?" I was like, "Yeah, fine." And the first question out is like, "So it's a close battle between you and Carl, isn't it? Like, how's it going to go?" It's like, "Oh well, I just need to make sure I get a good round this weekend," and it was okay. But it wasn't winning every heat and the final by 10 seconds. And then from that point on, he walked to it. So
yeah, I mean, it was good that it was a close championship from an outsider's point of view, though, right? At least I think that C1 championship, if I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure I'm not, was pretty sewn up by Butmore. So it was the only championship that had any decider at the final round, so it was at least entertaining to watch from a neutral perspective.
Well, I'm glad it could be entertaining.
Says one seething.
yeah. It's just one of those things. Like you want to go in and you want to do well and like come in second and sixth overall and all that kind of stuff is like it's cool, but like knowing that it was a combination of Kyle hitting really good form at the end of the year, and then just me being the opposite of what you were saying, just not consistent. And it was.
I think you're really unlucky at Butmore. I wouldn't put that one on you. I think Butmore was not on you. If I remember, I swear something dubious happened in the A final that just caused you to lose a load of positions.
Yeah, what happened? I think
I can't remember, but I remember something.
I think I've got. So I'll put like a little video clip over of what actually happened now. But I'm pretty sure, like going into hairpin one, either someone like sent it in like alongside me and ended up spinning on the apex, or I picked to go down the inside because everyone else was sort of going wide and trying to get the drive off. Obviously, you put yourself in a bit of a rubbish position for hairpin too. But it was kind of like just trying to get as far forward as quickly as possible, and then someone span on the apex in front of me, and it was just like, I'm last. Amazing. Yeah.
I mean, you've taken that forward since though. Although now saying that, I realise this last season's results, or your first C1, you've done the exact same. You finished in the exact same finish position.
Yeah.
Six
again. Although I've managed to use it to my advantage this year, where I called up the office and I was just like, seeing as I finished sixth in this one and I finished sixth in this one, can I just have sixth for all of the number plates, please? And they're like, yeah, sure. So yeah, I now don't have to change my number plate now. I'm just sixth for everything.
Aren't they a different colour for the SB60?
They are, yeah, but I can line them up, and now I'm officially a devil worshipper, so I've got 3 sets. So, yeah. Maybe I can sell my soul to Satan, and I'll come fifth this year.
Yeah, just. I mean, I think you'd be on course to finish in the top 5. But you'd hope so.
Well, yeah. So
that's looking forward.
Yeah, I'd like to try and finish in the top 5s. The like SP60 last year. Well, me last year. Like my middle of the year was just abysmal. I couldn't get heat results to save my life. Like I think in half of the year 2 years ago, I'd won more heats than I won all of last year.
Oh wow! Okay.
Just I couldn't buy a heat win to save my life last year. So yeah, if I can get on top of that and win a few more heats, or at least podium a few more heats, then try and get some top 5s. And then yeah, SP60 last year just was not good. Too many mistakes, too many really poor qualifying. I got really bad at qualifying. 2 years ago I was quite decent. I was all right in qualifying and sort of getting good laps in, whereas last year I was like, oh yeah, I'm starting like 12th again. Great. Like yeah. But,
I could not. You're quite well, yeah. If I had to describe you as anything, I would say very consistent in terms of times as well on the road. So I'm very surprised that qualifying was an issue for you last year, because I could just imagine you being able to bang a lap in and it'd just be pretty much the same for a qualifying session.
Yeah, maybe it's just I wasn't putting myself on the road in a decent position, like trying to chase somebody down. So I didn't have any.
Yeah, that helps. And also, slipstream. I always feel like I didn't do SP60, of course. I did the endurance championship, but I always noticed that people who like did well in quali and would fall back in the race, they just get a really good toe on one lap in the 10 minutes, and it just shot them up the grid. Because you like because the grid is really tight. Any of those like listening, like I'd say 2 temps can separate like good 10, 15 positions in quali, and like the top 10 is usually just separated by 2 to 3 temps. If you get a long toe on a long straight and you gain 2 to 3 temps, then that is the difference between maybe 10th and maybe pole. So it can make a huge difference when it comes to quality. And so just timing that right, being behind a quick enough driver that doesn't hinder your lap, you're right in a toe, can really make the difference there in quality.
Did you ever find that like the quali session for the endurance was a bit longer, wasn't it? So like, did you ever find that you would work a bit more tactically with other drivers in terms of like, if there was someone that was quicker, they'd be able to recognise that in some situations pushing you along would be better for both of you rather than just going past you and having clean air in front of them, or not so much?
I'm having to think back a bit, because when we did our last season, we had Adam Wright, who by all accounts finished 4th in the championship last year, and like by all accounts on terms of pace is definitely a bit quicker than me and Miguel Hall, who was our other teammate, and so he did all the qualies last year. But the year before, when I was qualifying for my other team, you did tentatively get that. Or what I try and do in those 10 minutes, I just wait for anybody on track that I knew was quicker. So like Joe was a good point of reference, or the Titan boys. There was always somebody that you knew would be quicker on track. And if some people would race you in qualifying, which is really silly. So I wouldn't bother with any of that. I'd just let off and wait until I could find somebody on track. I always thought it'd be better trying to chase somebody that I know is slightly quicker than me, and hopefully get a toe from them, because I know they won't interrupt me, because the chances are I won't be quicker than them. But I can still get a toe from them in quali, so that was always what I tried to do. And if I did the SP60, that's what I'd try and do as well, to be honest.
You can be my driver coach for SP60 from this point on.
I can have you on you can have me on the radios. I think I'd be more of a distraction.
Loud radio on SP60.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I haven't looked at the rules for regs. Okay, I'll have a pit board then.
Yeah, have a pit board. Although, to be fair,
slow. Please be quicker.
I was going to say, like, if you were able to be in my ear during the SP60, it would just be a case of like, right, are you pressing the throttle? That would really help. Yeah.
How was the first 2 rounds good? Actually, we should probably. Actually, have we done aims for this year? I'm trying to think. We keep going off on.
Yeah, if I can get within the top 5, I think for the sprints, I'll be happy. If I can try and be sort of top 3 in SP60, SP40, that would be great for me, I think.
Okay, I think I'm quite well. I only do the sprints. I'm kind of similar. I'd like to break into the top 5, but for me personally, I think I care more about having rounds where tend to have more consistency, and if I'm just looking at like my overall pace compared to like a Joe and Amor in a heat, or Kurt, like just closing that slight gap, because I'd say like there's a few temps in pace between them consistently and somebody like myself. So I'm more, rather than my finishing position this year, I'm actually just more focused on making sure that gap's closed. And if I ever have them in a heat, it's not about they get past me and drive off. It's they're actually looking over their shoulder a bit and thinking, he's behind me, or I'm racing them for positions on track. I don't know. Yeah, this particular year, I guess because maybe it's my first year in C1, and I'm only just doing the sprints this year, as opposed to in future years, I imagine I'll do a bit more. That I care a bit less about where my championship standings are, and more roughly how close I am at most tracks compared to them, and also my kind of feelings going into a round. I'd say until like last year, like I'd never be confident that if I had those 3 on track, that I'd be able to keep up with them. Whereas this year, I want to be able to go into rounds with the mindset of actually, if I've got them in a heat, I can race them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. One of the biggest things I find, that's something I'm trying to do better now, is I think especially with having larger heat squids than we did last year, the rate of progression that those guys are able to get from their back start to where they finish at the end of the race, even if they don't necessarily win a race, it's like they've gone from 16th to 3rd in the space of like 3 laps, and it's just like the combination of patience and assertiveness to get that done has to be perfect every single time. And I think sometimes either I'm too patient and I haven't switched myself from like SP60 mode into sprints mode, whereas in the SP60 you can kind of have a lap or two to work out whether or not you're going to be faster by pushing someone along or overtaking them. Yeah. Whereas obviously in sprints it's a case of, well, if you're behind someone for 2 or 3 corners, that's too long. Let alone being behind someone for a lap, sort of thing. And I think the final at GYG was a good one on that, where like sometimes it might be a case of like you'd be quite happy to push me along, whereas you're like, no, if I'm staying behind you, I'm not getting up. So it was just a case of you went past and disappeared, and it was like, yeah, fine.
Yeah, I can't. I go too far the other end. To be fair, in my heats, I'm too aggressive. I don't make moves at sensible times. I will just go. I don't think I picked up a penalty this season, so we're doing all right on that front. But yes, yeah. Wait for now. Now I've said that, Wilton, I'll be called to the bloody steward's office. I'll get so many. But I think I don't make moves efficiently. Well, when we end up kind of recapping the past rounds, like this will come up, but like I'll try and make a move straight away, but actually I've not done it at the best part of the track, and I'll lose a few seconds, and then actually I've just hindered both our gains. And even though it's not a matter of trying to stick behind them and follow them for a lap, like you said, it's about overtaking in the right spot so that you lose the least amount of time possible. I think that's what the top 3 are really good at, which is definitely something I'm less good at judging. I'm just, as soon as I'm behind somebody and I know I'm quicker, especially if I see them looking back for a bit, I'm just ready to send it down the inside. Because in my head, it's like if you're looking back and you know I'm gaining sizable on you, I'm that for you in your head, especially early on in a heat, that's a matter of time that I'm going to send a move. You're just prepared for it, which obviously isn't the case, and it's a matter of me being a bit too greedy, and so I need to be a bit more careful planning when going for a move, and hopefully that should lead to me not losing a load of time trying to get through a pack. Yeah. That's the idea.
It gets you nerves as well, doesn't it, when you have like you're 1 lap into a sprint race and you've already got somebody that's looking over their shoulder and white lining it, and it's just kind of like,
oh no, like, so why are you white lining it 2 laps in?
We're in 13th. Like, come on, have some optimism that you are going to move forwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't ever think of that mentality of like white lining it 3 laps into a heat. Like if somebody overtakes me early on in a heat, it's a matter of, all right, they're probably a bit quicker for now. Either learn off them or just push them along and try and keep with them and go through with them. I've never understood that philosophy. At lap 1, fair enough, right? But after that, come on.
Yeah. And then on the last lap, ram them off and then get the position. It's fine.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, last lap, do whatever you want. Last lap, be as dirty, be as offensive, like make your cart 2 times as wide.
Yeah, right.
Everything's on the table.
Conspiracy theory, right?
Go on.
I am convinced that no penalties get called on the last lap.
Because now you've said that, you're going to open up Pandora's box here.
I am, right. So no, I'm convinced, because there's been multiple occasions where either I've seen somebody murder somebody else, or I have been murdered, or possibly on occasion, not last year, not this year, but on occasion maybe I have done a murder on a last lap and haven't been pinged for it.
I would say that I've seen it. Definitely in BKC, I've seen penalties being called on the last lap. I do think they're a bit more lax, but I can imagine as a marshal, if you've been stood there for like 7-8 minutes and you've been really focusing in on the racing to make sure you call any penalties, and there's somebody in the mid pack on the last lap, which is completely irrelevant to most of the actual front pack, where everybody's kind of close together, you might miss somebody doing an absolute send out of nowhere and just murdering somebody. I think it might be human nature that you might miss that. But I think there's hints of truth in what you're saying there. I wouldn't be too surprised if not, There's a lack of penalties called on the last lap.
This isn't an advertisement for or condoning of murdering people on the last lap.
No. Do not take advantage. If this is fact, do not take advantage. Hopefully, you'll get a penalty and realise.
Yeah, this is where we go to Wilton on the last lap. All bar the person that was in last end up in the field at the top of the hill. It's just like, but yeah, just
like that though.
Little tinfoil hat moment there. Just yeah. If you are going to murder someone, just do it on the last lap and you'll be fine. Yeah,
do it on the last lap, or do it if you know there's like a 5-car battle just ahead of you. So then they're all focusing on that, and you're just in the background. That I think happens when there's such a big train of carts all going for moves that the ones just slightly behind can get away with murder because nobody's watching them. If you're the marshal, you're looking at the massive pile up in front of you, not the two lagging slightly behind.
Yeah,
I've definitely seen people get away with that before.
Yeah, if there's a really entertaining like battle happening in front of you, like go for it. If everyone's a bit spread out, be a bit more careful. Yeah.
This is like illegal or like unethical life tips or unethical cart tips.
Right, go on then. So, how was your? Being that we've had 2 rounds to start the year, right? In general, how was your Butmore and your GYG?
Butmore started off great and then just fell flat like a pancake. But yeah, if I recap my heats, I got my back heat first, and I did very decently well. And the one thing I actually noticed from that heat was because you'd start in like 17th. There's a bigger grids now. We've got so in the past we used to have 12 heats, of which you have a front, middle, and back start. Now that's been shortened to 9. And there's less drivers, so there's slightly less entries, but you do tend to have more drivers in a heat. So your back start is a lot further back than usual. And so I realised straight away that actually, from going to maybe needing a podium in every heat to get like really high up in the A final, by just being there or thereabouts in the top 5 and maybe have a win, like you'll be again in the top 5 of the A final. So my back heat went really well. Managed to get up to 5th, I think. Was in a battle for 3rd on the last lap as well, but I couldn't. I tried to make it stick around the outside of hairpin 2, and it just didn't work. So first heat went pretty well. I was quite happy with that, and the second heat I won, which I was definitely happy with that. I think I started 2nd, to be fair. So like expectation when you've got a front start, as same with you, will be just to win. But I did have Joe Holmes in that heat, who I was expecting to come past, but luckily he did not. And then after that I was feeling great. Then it came into the last heat, and I ended up with a cart on top of me lap 1, and I ended up with
and that's
damage.
How 100 carts are made.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure I birthed a couple carts in that moment. But yeah, I then had crash damage as my throttle body was stuck, so I essentially finished last. Luckily, though, I was in the A final, so I thought I could still make something of it, and then I just. I actually had a decent cart to begin with, and I thought if I want to make a lot of progress, I need something better. So I took the gamble and swapped it, and it didn't work out. I just had something that I couldn't handle well. I don't know if it was actually necessarily slow. I just don't think I was able to get on top of it and able to get some good laps out of it. So I was pretty much towards the back. So Butmore was. A story of 2 halves. Unfortunately, it was the first half that went well, not the final and the last heat. What about your Butmore? Let's go through your Butmore, then we'll do GYG.
So Butmore, what did I do?
Started
off well. Got a 2nd in race 1. I can't remember what was my front, middle, and back start. I think that was my middle start, race 1. Yeah, and then heat 2, I had absolute brain fade and span. And then
I remember that on the video. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the 3rd heat finished 6th. I think that might have been my back start, and I just couldn't. Either I couldn't progress forward, or I think I got caught up in something that kind of. I got forward and then got knocked back again, and then had to try and get forward and just couldn't get any further than 6th. And then finished 9th in the final. I think I started 17th or so in the final and got up to 9th, which was okay. It's just it was one of those classics of my pace was really good. I just wasn't in a position to actually use it because I had terrible heats and started too far back. So
yeah, that's the other thing. Like just trying to start up as high up in that A final as possible, so you can actually fight the leaders because they're so quick. you can't rest on your laurels a bit, even if you're a bit quicker in a final, which does happen. Like sometimes you get either a good car or sometimes you just really gel to a track where you might have pace over the leaders, but you if you're not in a place to capitalize on it, it doesn't matter because they're gone.
No.
I would say
to find out where my I want to know what my pace was like in the A final. Let's have a quick look because I feel like it wasn't too bad. Where am I? There I am.
I think you had one of the fastest laps of the race.
So
I remember getting actually to the back of you at the start and hoping I could stick with you, and you absolutely driving off like it was nothing. In all honesty,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure your pace is really good.
I think I remember that because I'm pretty sure. Like I saw you behind me, I was like, "Oh, sweet! Like we can work together a little bit." And then like a lap or two later, I looked behind, and you just weren't there anymore. And I was like, "That's either really good for me, or you've had something terrible happen to you."
Yeah, I just couldn't keep up. I was just looking at the times. I was 3 tenths slower than you. You did a 46.7.
Yeah, which apart from Joe, who was like half a second quicker than everybody.
Yeah, if we ignore Joe Holmes,
you were as quick as the top 5. So like, I'd have taken that.
But one thing you said about your backstart when you finished 6th, like I think that's bordering on what you need pretty much. Like I think for your backstarts nowadays, I would have always said I wanted a podium at every round, but now I look at the backstarts, and if I got like a top 5 around 5th or 6th, I'd be happy with that. Just because if you're like starting 15th, 16th, like you can, and as the top guys have proven, you can do it. You can get a top 3. You can win a heat from the back, but I think over the course of the season, having a 5th from it is perfectly fine, and you'll still be like in contention for a top 3 in an A final as a starting grid.
Yeah,
I think people's heats results will be relatively lower than last year, apart from top 3. If right now they're complete anomalies. I don't think they'll keep. I don't think they'll keep up getting 3 heat wins across the rest of the season. But that has happened to Joe and Kurt so far in one round each.
Yeah, I mean, I had a 7th in one of the heats at GYG and still managed to start 6th on the finals grid. So I mean, if that's going to be consistent and in getting in the top 5 is actually a really good day, in terms of getting you forward on the A final grid, then that's definitely an attainable target, I think, for most people.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you look at the championship standings, I find this quite funny. Because Joe and Kurt have won 3 heats each and Amor's won like 4 heats, there's like only 4 other drivers who have won a heat this year so far. Despite having 18 heats. You just noticed that.
Yeah.
But going through GYG, I might as well recap minor results as well. First heat was my mid start. I think I started 11th, like maybe 9th. I can't remember exactly why, but it was like kind of the mid. It was like a mid back start, and I got up to 5th. I think I would have got up a lot higher, but again, similar to what I was alluding to before, in kind of my issues with my racecraft is I went down the inside of somebody in the 3rd sector, which is pretty tight, and I just wasn't able to make it stick. And I ended up, I probably should have just dropped back, but I ended up trying to hang it around the outside, and I got past eventually, but we lost like 2-3 seconds. Right. I only managed to then catch back up to the next pack by the end of the race, so I wasn't able to challenge the top 3, whereas I think I could have challenged for either the win or the top 3 in that heat. The second heat, I think I started dead last and I got up to 7th. Again, I probably could have done slightly better. I think the top 5 was probably possible, but I got, again, kind of caught up in a scrap with one driver, which I overtook quite cleanly to begin with, but I just didn't expect him to send the move back on me. And then he did, and I couldn't get past him for another 2 laps, and it just hindered my progress. And I definitely do that sometimes, where I overtake somebody early on into the heat, and I just assume that they're not going to send a move straight back because like it's still early days, so you wouldn't think that they'd just fight you. You'd think that you'd try and push forward, and then they do. And you leave the door open, and then you just get overtaken, and that's something I also need to keep in mind. And then the 3rd heat, which to that point, having a 5th and a 7th, I thought I was starting on pole in the last heat, and I thought I should win that. And then I should have a good start for the final, and I absolutely bottled it. In all honesty, my car didn't handle the way I thought. I think the chassis was slightly bent, and I should have been like coming out of the pits. Like I think again, this is something the top drivers are able to do. They're able to notice that pretty quickly. They send it fully around the corner, and they're able to tell straight away. I didn't, and the shocking first lap dropped down from pole to 5th. I managed to get back up as soon as I realised like the cart was slightly bent and I just needed to turn the steering wheel a bit more. It was fine to drive, like it was quick. I just needed to realise that, and unfortunately I couldn't get back to the win, but I did manage to finish second. But I definitely think that was a missed opportunity for a win. I really should have won that heat. But I can't complain with a second. I think that put me 8th for the A final, in which I got a really nice cart, to be honest. And yeah, I started just behind you. I think I was up to 4th after lap 1, or up to 5th after lap 1. Got past Mikey straight away into 4th. Took a couple of laps to get past Joe, who just had a really bad car, and then by the end, because Kurt and Amoir were defending, I was on the back of them towards the end of the race. But I just never felt like I was in a position to make a move, and I thought, in my head, I thought that they'd fight each other a lot more, and they'd have a moment where they'd both struggle and I'd get past. And they did. 2 laps to go on the last corner. Kurt sent a move, and they both got a really bad exit. And I thought this is my time, but I couldn't get alongside him. I could only move my car out of the way to hit into the back of Kurt. Had I managed to clear them both, like got away from their bumper, I think I would have been able to make an overtake there. Whether I would have held the lead of the race for very long, I don't know. But there was only 2 laps to go, so I think that was my moment lost there. But I've never finished in the top 3 before, so to me that was a great confidence boost. And I'm glad it's finally happened, because I've had a few false starts. Even last year at GYD, if you remember, I was running third for most of that until you and Adam Wright came along.
Yeah, that is literally one of my favourite moments from the previous year, is when you tried sending it round the outside at Spoon.
Oh yeah, and you just gave me a little not a chance, not today, sunshine. That was great. That was probably my favourite finals of last year. I loved that. Two of the people I get along best with on the paddock, and having a nice race with them with a few laps to go was great. It was last in that 3-horse race. I loved it. I thought it was a great battle.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. I think, especially when you're driving against someone that like is quick, but you know exactly how they're going to react to stuff on the circuit. It means you can battle each other so much tighter.
Yeah.
And then you have those moments where I think sometimes it would be fair to see yourself coming across as quite forceful, or I think aggressive. I tend to try and distinguish between aggression and assertiveness, because I think like aggression is uncontrolled and assertiveness is you're still under control at that point. But I think sometimes you can see why people who are maybe quick but inconsistent, or people who aren't quite experienced enough yet to be at the front regularly, get overtaken by someone who is consistent and quick, or does have that experience to get towards the front and race there more consistently. Can have that perception of the guys at the front are really aggressive, whereas I don't think, and like, being that I can race up in that kind of like top 5, top 6 area or so, like I'd like to think that I'm one of those people. But like you race against like you and you, Mikey, Joe, Kurt, Anwar, and because like we've had the ability to race against people like that for a decent amount of time, it's not aggression. It's just like you get used to how each other drive, and you can race each other a lot more closely. And you don't end up having as many of those moments where you kind of like get podded off. So like you can run within a cigarette paper of each other, but you don't actually really make any contact, and you can squeeze each other, but you know how far to go and things like that. Whereas when you're driving against people that you don't have the opportunity to drive against as much, like you kind of sometimes end up in a situation where you do have a slight bit of contact, and that might come off as a bit brash or unfair, but it's like, well, you don't have that experience of each other. So
no, exactly. And I think part of that as well is just the fact that when you're racing somebody who you don't race with as much, you don't know exactly how much room to give, because you don't know how much you're going to get. So you might pull a move which, you know, on 90% of the drivers, they'll give you enough space where you're not going to have enough contact. But actually, on this occasion, it's somebody who's really, really intent on keeping that position, and they're not going to give you any space whatsoever. Which, so you might like, depending on who you are, like this is kind of like racing code ethics, or like whether you think that's fair enough that they're giving you enough space or not is kind of a moot point. You've gone in for a move thinking that there'll be space left, and there isn't, and so then you have that kind of pod to pod contact, and then it's about in those races trying to figure out, okay, how do I get past somebody without making that contact, and how can I understand what they're going to do despite not knowing their kind of racing philosophy or how they typically place their car on track beforehand, and trying to unlock that. Which again, like said it plenty of times about what the top three do really well, but that's something that they're pretty able to do. Like drivers which I might or you might struggle getting past because they're really, really defensive, they'll manage to just kind of send a move that's just either takes them by surprise or is so quick that you don't have time to defend that brashly. And they're able to kind of pick out that. I think that they have the knowledge of which drivers will tend to do that, which I definitely don't. Like I just kind of treat most drivers the same, apart from you, Mikey, Miguel, the top three, like the people that mostly the C1s or the people that I'm on track with a lot, which do tend to be C1s because they're usually the quickest drivers. So yeah, I think that's something that they're really good at.
What else? What happened to me at GYG?
Yeah, this is now going through your results at GYG. Let me get back up.
So I had a second, a seventh, and a fourth. Right. So first race, that was me trying to chase down Kurt. If I had one more lap, I reckon I could have had him. But yeah, that was a fun race in terms of the having to make. It was. I think that was my kind of like middly start. In terms of like having to try and get forward quickly before Kurt could just do a runner. I think I had a slight kart advantage over him, to the point where by the time I got through, he wasn't so far away that I could sort of chase him down a little bit. But yeah, I needed. We had in that race a period of full course yellow, which I think if potentially that hadn't happened, maybe I'd have been able to have enough time to properly get on his bumper. But we didn't have that time, therefore I didn't, so I finished second. Then second race, I ended up getting nudged on at Spoon. Like I was at the head of quite a long train, and I think someone in that train either forgot to or chose not to brake, and then me being at the front ended up just getting pushed wide, and then that sort of just set me back again, having to try and catch up. Otherwise, I think that would have been a decent result. And then third race, I had to swap the kart. So yeah, so
you don't usually do that in your third heat because you don't get a lap really.
No, so literally coming off the grid, it was like sitting on a washing machine. So I'm guessing it had been. I'm guessing it had been involved in like a bit of contact earlier in the day, and for some reason no one else had parked it. So there was a bit of a run on the axle. So you're kind of like, I was going down the straight like that, and it's just like, yeah, maybe not this one. And that was it was like a mini heat of death, that one. So I was like, if I'm gonna have a car, it needs to be one that isn't bouncing up and down all the time. So sort of quickly went in and parked that one up and managed to change it. But whether I think I came fourth in that one. I went for a move, I think similarly to you, in the like the Devil's Elbow section of it, of the circuit, where I'd been making moves there all weekend and it had been going all right. And then this particular one, I just didn't quite get enough alongside going into the left-hander, and got sort of tangled up. And then that allowed Anwar and Stephen Westwood to get past. And then I had to obviously make them. And whereas if I'd just been a bit more patient and gone for the move on the straight going up the hill, then that wouldn't have happened and possibly could have finished in sort of second or top three. Because after that, the sort of pace between me, Stephen, and Anwar, like I was a little bit quicker than Stephen in that race, and Anwar and I were similar-ish, but he had the edge on me just because he was more consistent. I think I just made a few too many mistakes, which allowed him, but the gap between us stayed pretty much the same throughout the race. So it was like, well, okay, well maybe if I'd have stayed in front, maybe I'd have had enough to stay in front of him, sort of thing. But yeah, and that put me on 6th, and then in the final I had a kart that was good enough for 6th. I could drive away from the people behind, but I couldn't catch up with you guys in front. So I
think part of it is that we had buddies, like we all were pushing each other along for the most part, whereas you were no man.
I was very lonely. Yeah. So yeah, it was a very lonely race for me. Where I was just like, I needed you guys to start fighting earlier to possibly allow me to catch up. Because I think if I had the tow, I might have been able to like spring a sort of surprise move on someone and move up a little bit, but. Overall pace, I had a kart that was only ever going to finish 6th. So, I think that's something I want to do better this year. Is like if I've got a 5th place go kart or a 6th place go kart or a 3rd place go kart, finish in that position. I think
that's definitely something as well. I think for me, which I'm getting slightly better at, is just recognizing when a kart. I think last year, like. Maybe towards the end I was starting to get it, but I need to recognise when a kart is good or a rocket or suits my driving style and when one doesn't for the A final, which I think I've definitely done this like at least so far in the heats and the final. Like I'm mainly starting to get my eye out on this motor's pretty good in the bottom end or it's better in the middle end, and so you can adapt your driving to that. Still handling like I need to do that in the warm-up lap. For the first heat it's easy enough, you get 3 laps of practice, but the second and third heat, like that pole start should have 100% been a win. Like have no one to overtake. I was the quickest on circuit. There's no reason not to win that heat like that. Like that should be the expectation as a driver. But because I just didn't realise how the car handled, because I didn't check in the warm-up lap, I just kind of drove as slow as possible and just lined up. I think that was a mistake on my part, and I really should have figured that out pretty sooner. And I think that's something I need to do for the rest of the rounds. Because I know I always hear them say like a load of people in the top 3 straight away, like as soon as they get out of the pits they know exactly how the cart's going to perform. I've never really felt that for the most part. On rare occasion I do, and more consistently more recently, but before this season I definitely never had felt that before.
Yeah. Have you noticed much?
Go on.
Have you noticed much difference in the way that either you've been driving the karts or much in the way that the kart feels compared to last year now that they've changed the restrictor plate and not the restrictor plate, I think it's the exhaust manifold. I think they've gone to a slightly wider exhaust manifold, and then the tyre difference as well.
Tyre difference at GYG, not at all. Restrictor plate similar to GYG, not at all, but at Buckmore definitely. Definitely felt the kart just have a bit more to it coming out of corners. And I don't think I'm personally, and maybe this is a fault on me, I've not changed my driving style on that specifically. I've definitely adapted my driving a bit more Buckmore and GYG to be a bit less. I previously, like last year, and how I've always driven is like I was uber aggressive in terms of driving style. Maybe it came with a racecraft, but I always I was locking up the brakes into most corners. I was going sideways and then catching it and then turning. Whereas now I just didn't care. Like I'd lock up into so many corners, I just wouldn't care less. That's what I used as an indicator that I'm braking about what I need to. Whereas now I'm not looking to lock up at all. I'm trying to drive a bit more smooth, and I think that's helped. I think I've got a bit more pace now. I think that's definitely helped, but that's not really been because of the restriction. That has just been like self-reflection on watching the front runners. Joe specifically, I never see that guy lock up. I never see he go sideways. He's usually very, very planted, and so I thought I'll try and adapt my driving style to suit that. So far, with pretty decent success.
Yeah, I have it on good authority that Steve beats Joe and Kurt if ever he sees them lock up.
You don't need to have the lock-up comment. Stop the sentence earlier.
I think the same as you. I think the difference in speed, I think you can notice it a little bit more. I think it was more noticeable at Buckmore than it was at GYG.
Buckmore definitely noticeable. Buckmore I was more concentrated in how I was driving. Especially like hairpin one, I never really thought was a corner. Like you've done it so many times, you do it monotonously, and I didn't have that. I was noticing actually. I need to check myself because I'm on the throttle a bit too early here, or on the brakes. Like I'm carrying a lot more speed in, so I'm missing the apex sometimes. So I definitely thought Buckmore it was very noticeable, and I think it will be more noticeable at Wilton. The GYG again, no bottom end. You didn't really feel it.
I think tyres wise, in the dry, I don't think there's much feel difference between the previous Dunlops and the new Dunlops. I think the biggest change is when they went from the Bridgestones to the Dunlops. I mean, I remember when they went to the Bridgestones, I'd gotten really used to being very positive on the front end and using the front axle to slow the kart down more. Whereas you couldn't. Once they've been scrubbed in and once they've been used, you can do that a bit with the Dunlops, but especially if you've got new boots on, the front end is a lot more. You have a lot more front end, so if you try to use the steering wheel to slow the kart down, it tends to do it too much and it unsettles the kart. So that it's definitely not as big a difference as going from the Bridgestones to the Dunlops was. But in the wet, I know it wasn't wet on the Sunday. I don't know if you had any wet running for BUKC.
No, this is new.
Yeah, so on the Saturday we had some drizzle to the point where the circuit got greasy, and in the first, I forget which one it was. I think it was the SP60. Yeah, it would have been because I started second. So in the first race of the SP60, finished second. So obviously I then start second in the next race. Yeah. And for the start of the next race, it had started to spit a bit, and the circuit was getting a bit greasy. Not wet, but definitely affected. And in the first lap, I think I just gave the wet a bit too much respect. And so I was being a little bit too sensitive, whereas Anwar, who'd started on pole, was just absolutely launching it in and really working the car. So he got temperature into his a lot quicker. And you could tell that made a massive difference over the course of the first lap. But when you did get the temperature into your tyres, you had a lot more grip on these new Dunlops in the back sort of greasy condition compared to the previous ones. And I don't know if that would be consistent for when it's like properly wet as opposed to just greasy, but yeah, there were certain corners that you could still, even though the rubbered in line was definitely slick, you could still take it, whereas in previous years you'd need to start
you'd stay off
getting a bit adventurous and having to like find the grip around the corner. Where you don't have to do that quite as much. It's a bit easier to drive, I think, in the wet, to a point. Like, cause obviously you're now able to carry more speed through a corner, so that point between adhesion and not is more treacherous if you click over it, because you're now carrying more speed, and potentially that will be worse for you if you do click over it. But if you're within the realms of where the grip is, you can certainly be a lot more positive on these new ones.
I think, to be fair, you say it's easier to drive, and I think for maybe the front runners that might be true, but I think one thing that I notice about newer drivers when it comes to driving in the wet is that it's harder to tell somebody that if you go quicker into the corner, you will grip up and you will be able to turn it easier. Because I from BKC, I've got a lot of like different levels of drivers through Sheffield that I kind of try and help, and I see quite consistently. And in the wet, like one of the biggest pitfalls is they'll get the revs so low that the fronts just aren't digging. So they'll put it full steering lock. They're not going quick enough. They're not really getting any like tire digging in, so it actually grips up. Or they're not aggressive enough on the brakes in the first place and like getting the back end out so they can get it turned. Which I think, from the sounds of it, might actually be the case, or might be harder to do in these tyres because you need to be able to carry more speed in for it to grip up. But that's what it sounds like. I've not driven it, so obviously I don't know. I think Wilton will be a really good test if it is raining, because I think out of all the tracks on the calendar in the wet, which I think I've done most of them in the wet now, I think that's the hardest one to drive in the wet. I think it's the least amount of grip. Wilton Mill is a circuit for Club 100. It's a circuit that people go to quite a lot. I guess because it's in the Midlands, it's very accessible. people usually do that and Buckmore Park a lot, and so everybody in that Sprints Championship will go there and fancy themselves at Wilton Mill, and they fancy themselves at Buckmore, and that tends to make the racing a bit more aggressive, and people are a bit less willing to hand over positions because it's that again they think they should be better at this track, and so having it wet might remove some of that aggressiveness or assertiveness you said before that some people might have. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'd love a Wilton Mill.
This is where it's the hottest day on record.
Yeah, it'll be like 30 odd degrees. But it's mid-May. It's in the Midlands. Like I could see it raining. I wouldn't be too surprised. It's just before summer, so let's get all the rain out of the way on that particular Sprints day. Yeah. What are your kind of thoughts going into Wilton actually? Whilst we're on the topic.
I like Wilton as a circuit. I think they missed the trick with the redevelopment of the last corner.
Yeah.
I think I 100% agree that they needed to do something to make that corner safer, because the nature of it was always asking for someone to get really hurt. The curve they had on the inside was far too big.
Yeah. The reference, they used to have this massive monster curve. Yeah, it was like, it would send you flying if you went over it.
Yeah, the wall on the outside is very close, and even though they've got their sort of Tech Pro style barrier on the outside, like it's still a wall. Like it's like
still hurt you.
Yeah, it's like when you're driving along and you see people driving on the roads like complete idiots, and it's like, well, like at some point you're going to come off and hit a tree, and the tree is going to win. Like that's to say, like a wall on a racing circuit, the wall will always win. But yeah, so they had to do something. However, I think the way that they've implemented their change, yes, potentially has made the corner less likely to injure people, but I think it does hurt the qualities that section of circuit had before. I mean, you could have a whole different conversation over, like, you've replaced a big curb and the possibility of it spitting you out into a wall for a curb that people are now absolutely launching and going, in some cases, all four wheels off the circuit.
Yeah.
And then damaging carts, or like you see where people are taking the curb too much and it's spitting them round, and then you've got people in a very short space of time where you can't really brake after you've hit the curb, going towards someone that is now stuck on circuit. I think it would have been a better choice to increase the radius of the last corner. So it's still fast, but it's a much smoother change of direction. So it was less like, and then you could put a lower curb on. So
yeah,
to the point where it's like taking the curb doesn't necessarily make you go faster around it, but it's there as like an indicator of track limits. But then again, I'm not the owner or I'm not the owner of Wilton Mill, nor am I the person that has to speak to Motorsport UK to get something.
We're not track designers at the end of the day, but I do tend to agree with you. I actually from a racing perspective, a lot of people don't really enjoy this new. So they put a new chicane. A lot of people don't really like it. They say it kind of hampers the flow of the track. A Club 100, so we don't get that curve, that massive curve that you can go all four wheels off. We don't get that. That's covered off by a million cones and tyres, and if you go near it, you're bound to get a load of penalties. So we don't have that issue, and I like it, but only purely from a personal greedy perspective of there seems to be more, like before with the monster curb, it was a flat corner or roughly flat that most people wouldn't gain much time on people. Now people mess up in the chicane, and so I can gain more time on people. So the only reason I really like it, I don't have any preference for it as a track, but I think for owner carts and for British Champs, yeah, I do agree. And I personally think that there's a decent chance that somebody will go flying off by having four wheels on a curb, or get pushed into it and end up in the wall and kind of having a similar situation, or somebody will end up spun on the curb, somebody won't notice, and you'll just have quite a bad accident. So I'm very wary. I think by all accounts it's probably safer than what they've had, but I don't think it's necessarily the best solution where safety's involved. And yeah, I think increasing the rad at the last corner would have been possibly a better idea. From again, not we don't see every perspective. We don't see what they were able to do. We weren't in those chats with Motorsport UK. We're just two random people who like karting. But from a just purely a rental karters or like a racer's point of view, yeah, I think that would have been a much better alternative.
To finish off, I want to add in a small bit of pessimism, but pessimism for comedic effect as opposed to pessimism for results.
Oh.
Because of this new corner, or it's not new anymore, is it really?
Yeah, we
did
did
this newest corner at Wilton Mill. Obviously, you have the original circuit still there, which is used on parade laps.
Yeah.
And then you go and think, my pessimism, how many people on the Sunday, because obviously not necessarily there on the Saturday, how many people on the Sunday are going to try and take the chicane on the parade lap rather than the cut through?
I think I did it last
and end up with the start just being an absolute like shambles.
I think I've done that before. I don't know if it was BUKC or if it was here. I've done that. I think that was me. I think I did it at BUKC. I don't think I did it at Club 100. I think it's easy to do if you've not done it before. Well, to accuse my own donutness, but yeah, like I've done that. I think it's easy enough to do.
Right. Okay. So now you said that, you are going to do it again. So there's one. So
yeah, I'll do it again. We can include it as a clip in the podcast. I'll have it on the GoPro, and we'll.
Yeah, there you go. When you get your grids through, if you get a pole grid, you have to take it.
Lead the entire grid through the chicane.
Yeah.
I'd do that. If I get full started, I have less time to defend for my heat.
There you go. Pre-orchestrated chaos.
That's my conspiracy theory, by the way. I know drivers that intentionally try and false start or jump the start on a pole so it gets restarted and they lose time. They have less time to win the heat, so they don't have to defend as much. I genuinely think people do that.
Yeah, I can see that. The one they were saying as well on the at the weekend was with the X30s. Because it takes their tyres a few laps to get ready, they intentionally, like as a group, like force a false start, so they get an extra couple of laps to get their tyres sorted. Yeah, but yeah, tinfoil hats back on. Yeah, I'm going to put it at 2. I'm going to put it at 2. I'm going to say that you're going to do it deliberately, and then
yeah, okay,
and then everyone's going to get a reminder. You don't go through the chicane on the formation lap, and everyone's going to go, yeah, okay, no worries. And then someone's still going to do it. So I reckon 2 people.
That's why I'll do it. I'll do it so I'll be like the sacrificial lamb, so everybody gets that extra reminder, so they don't forget. I reckon it'll happen in the lightweights more than the heavies, though, just because it's full of juniors. Well, yeah, like as another prelude, like the heavyweights is usually full of older drivers. Like I think I'm one of the youngest heavyweights on the grid.
Yeah. Whereas
I would be like average, well, yeah, above average in the lightweight grid because it's full of juniors. There's less people in adult age.
Yeah, I know I said that was the last thing, but I want to get this out now. We can do a bit more next time. I tell you what, the lightweights love a penalty at the moment, don't they? Jeez.
I was there for I watched both Buckmore and GYG live. I stayed at the paddock for both. All the heavies are on in the morning, all the lights are in the afternoon. And GYG was better, but not great. But Buckmore, oh my. That was whenever we complain about driving standards in the heavyweights, I felt guilty because I saw that and I thought, no. No, that was shocking. It was bad. It was too aggressive. I don't know. I think part of it is like you've got younger drivers there, people who are moving up from junior, so I feel like they feel the need to make a point. But even speaking to lightweight drivers who are quite experienced in the lightweights, this season has been, a step up or a step down really in terms of driving standards, and a lot of penalties are getting dished out. They're cracking down on it, and I think they improved for GYG. Whether they'll improve for Wilton Mill, bearing in mind what I've said before about how everybody kind of backs themselves at that circuit, I don't know.
I think you just condemn them to a weekend of misery based off what you said.
Yeah, I'm a bit nervous. Or I'm not marshalling. I'm not nervous still. But if I was, I'd be a bit nervous for what's about to come. Be entertaining. I'd probably end up watching the lights as well, to be honest. But it'd be entertaining to see.
But thank you very much for watching or listening or doing whatever it is you're doing. To take in.
Thank you for tuning in at all.
In your ear holes and enjoying it in whatever way that you wish. So until next time, thank you very much, and as always,
thank you.
Have a good one. Say bye, Adam.
Hopefully nobody gets any penalties at Wilton and has the best day of their lives.
He's lying. He hates you all. Bye.